To use a Gracey in the mouth, I'm going to start showing the 11-12. So how you use this is you enter at 0, which sometimes, honestly, with 11-12, it's kind of impossible. So you get 0. 0 means the face of the instrument and the tooth are touching. So you wiggle it down to the base of the pocket, come up on your fulcrum. That means this working the terminal shank of the instrument and the tooth are parallel. They're like railroad tracks. And then you're going to do short, lots of lateral pressure strokes. Ideally, you should never come out of the pocket while you're doing this. Then to stop, you're going to close back to 0. The face is going to go back on the tooth. And you're just going to wiggle it out of the pocket like that. With the 11-12, this is also for the buckle as well as the mesial. So as you get into the buckle, you're going to try to go as 0 as you can. Sometimes it's impossible, but just try to wiggle it down to 0 to the base of the pocket. Come up so the terminal shank and the tooth are lined up nice and parallel, and then short little millimeter strokes with good wrist motion. The nice thing about Gracey's is you are so sub, so you have sometimes some room to do oblique strokes, horizontal strokes, vertical strokes, all different strokes to get that big tenacious piece of calculus off. To come out, you're going to go back to 0 as much as you can and then wiggle it out. To work the distal, you're going to get the face to 0 to the tooth. That means the face is touching the tooth. You're going to wiggle it sub underneath that calculus, come up all the way so this terminal shank and the tooth are nice and parallel, nice and straight together, and then short little millimeter working strokes. I can feel the catch of the cutting edge on the tooth. That's a perfect thing. That means I have the correct angle with my terminal shank. If it feels like it's sliding like this, that means the cutting edge isn't on the tooth. We need to come up a little bit more. How you work the Gracey 1-2, start at 0, same as all your Graceys, and that face is on the tooth. You're going to wiggle it sub, come up. It's a full 90-degree turn, so it's kind of a lot in a tiny area. Come up so the terminal shank and the tooth are nice and parallel. Short little millimeter strokes with that last tip third of your instrument, all sub, till the calculus comes off. Then you're going to relax your hand, go back to 0, and wiggle it out. Sometimes I like to know why we do things. One of the reasons why we do short millimeter strokes is that these instruments are so specific to areas. So if I do a whole tooth in one stroke, I'm going to move my instrument a lot of different ways, and that 70-degree angle isn't going to be correct for the majority of the tooth. It's only going to be correct in 2 millimeters. So why are we wasting the time to scale the whole tooth when it's really only working in 1 or 2 millimeters anyway? We're just going to really focus with these instruments, these tiny little areas where calculus is being left way down in the base of the pocket. A really important thing with Gracey's is you want your instrument handle and the tooth parallel on the same plane. So you kind of want your handle flat. A lot of times I'll see people trying to Gracey like this with the instrument kind of at a perpendicular to the tooth. But how the instrument is curved, it won't let us get all the way sub and all the way to the base of the pocket. So we need to drop our shoulder, drop the instrument so we can get all the way sub and all the way to that base where that calculus is always hiding. With Gracey's, it's really important that you have the terminal shank and the tooth parallel because it's going to make that perfect 70-degree angle for you. If you tend to be a little bit off like this, that cutting edge isn't even going to be on the tooth and you're just going to be kind of like scraping the tooth. We want this nice and parallel so we can feel that catch of the instrument on the tooth. That. Another thing with Gracey is you always want to be using the last tip third of the instrument. So when you're interproximal, make sure you're feeling with that last tip third and you're going to over adapt just a little bit to make sure it's on there. That's really going to be able to get the instrument sub and get those deep pieces of tenacious calculus off. With Gracey's, it's really important to have a good fulcrum and good lateral pressure and wrist motion. Everything that you've learned comes up to this point. So lots of lateral pressure and a short little wrist motion. Your stroke length should only be 1 or 2 millimeters. If you're coming out of the pocket or coming out of the tooth, your stroke length and your wrist motion is way too long. So just short little 1 to 2 millimeter length strokes.